Hey, everybody. Welcome to BWE's Affordable Housing Policy Update. My name is Ben Nichols. I'm the Director of Affordable Housing Operations at Bellwether Enterprise. Today, we're going to tackle two topics. The first being the debt ceiling, and the second being the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act, AHCIA. And we're going to talk about how those two impact affordable housing development and operations for the foreseeable future. So before I introduce our panelists, got a couple of housekeeping items. First of all, if you have a question, at the bottom of your Zoom screen is a Q&A button. Please press that and type your question in. We will answer the questions after we tackle both subjects. And then secondly, this event is being recorded and you'll receive a link for that recording after the event. So now to introduce our two panelists, Jennifer Schwartz. Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Ben. Thanks
Jennifer Schwartz is the Director of Tax and Housing Advocacy at the National Council of State Housing Agencies. Jennifer leads NCHSA's multifamily and tax policy team and oversees the organization's federal legislative advocacy efforts with particular focus on the low-income housing tax credit and tax-exempt private housing bonds. Our other panelist is Liz Osborn. Hey, Liz.
Hi, everyone.
Liz Osborn is the Vice President of Policy at Enterprise Community Partners, where she oversees the organization's advocacy efforts. Liz has spent 15 years shaping policy and media strategy on Capitol Hill in the executive branch and then in the international nonprofit sector. So welcome to you both, and thank you for joining us. So the first topic we're going to tackle is the debt ceiling, and this is a very fluid topic. Right now, the House Rules Committee is voting to decide if they should take the bipartisan deal to the full House floor for a vote. So we are going to be monitoring that throughout the next hour, and if there is a vote, which could make us pivot the discussion at any moment. And also for our audience members, if you hear about the vote before we do, please type that into the Q&A so that we can respond accordingly. But this is fluid, as I mentioned, so we could be changing. But in the short term, the debt ceiling, two big things happened over the weekend. First, Friday afternoon, Treasury Secretary Yellen came out and said that the X date, the date that we would breach the ceiling, is actually next Monday, June 5th, instead of June 1st. So that gave Congress a little bit more breathing room to get everything passed. But then secondly, Saturday night, word came that Speaker McCarthy and President Biden had agreed to spending cuts to go along with the debt ceiling raise. In those cuts, a few of the items claw back with some of the IRS funding in the Inflation Reduction Act from last year, recovery of unspent COVID dollars. Student debt payments would restart at the end of August. And then for the budget, veterans and military spending would increase at 3% a year for the next 2 years. And other annual discretionary spending would be flat for this year and then increase for 1% the following year. So first question to you, Liz, is what is the process for getting this all through both the House and the Senate?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Good question. I think everyone wants to know is how fast can this happen? Will it happen in time? And what does it take to get us there? And so the intent is for the House of Representatives to vote on this package or this deal tomorrow. But before they do that, it has to go through the Rules Committee. And the Rules Committee is a very powerful committee that gets to kind of dictate if and when and how legislation gets to the floor. It's usually made up of supporters of the speaker and leadership. And so right now it has 9 Republicans and 4 Democrats on the Rules Committee. But because of all of the 15 different votes and all the negotiation that it took to elect Speaker McCarthy way back in the beginning of this Congress, he doesn't have as many allies in those Republicans as he would want in this very critical time. And so he's already lost 2 Republicans, and That's the most that he can lose in this vote. So before the bill gets to the House floor, it's got to make it out of rules. And so that big drama right now is, can Republicans pass this bill out of the Rules Committee? As I said, there are 9 Republicans, 4 Dems, so you need 7 Republicans to vote for them. And they have 2 that have already said on the record they will vote against moving it out of the committee. And so it really comes down to Representative Massey from Kentucky. And he's been kind of on the fence, but has previously said that he wouldn't use his position to obstruct where Republicans want to go in terms of leadership, but would use the House floor instead. So they're having this discussion, this vote right now on the Rules Committee. The expectation is that Representative Massey will support moving the bill out of committee, and so it will pass. But that's kind of the big drama in the House right now. The other thing I would say is that there's a provision in the debt negotiation that's the 99% provision. We're all still kind of digging through this this deal, but what we understand is that kind of the way we're reading it is that if you're not able to get to an appropriations deal by January 1st, you basically go into an auto CR, continuing resolution to fund the government at 99% of whatever the funding is now, so a 1% cut. And we can talk a little bit more about what that means for appropriations a little later in this call, but that we understand is Massey's piece of the bill, and so or of the agreement, and so he kind of has what he wants in there. We think he'll use the floor to voice any sort of other concerns, and so we expect him to support the bill out of committee. And then the other thing to keep in mind, so it goes to the House, theoretically, it goes to House floor, theoretically passes. We think it will pass if it gets there with strong numbers. But then when you move over to the Senate side, the Senate process can take quite a while. And so we expect that they'll need to have some sort of agreement to expedite consideration on the Senate floor to move it along over there faster. Otherwise, if they used all their time, it would theoretically go past that June 5th, the deadline, to June 6th or 7th. We can talk more also about what we think that looks like, whether or not that be much different from where we already are, kind of teetering on the edge of disaster. But we expect that they would use a process to expedite that along and get this all passed by Monday.
Great. This was a question for both of you, and this is crystal ball, so you can look into your nice hazy crystal balls and say, what are the chances that the deal may not pass by Monday, just because of the process?
You know, Ben, I think the stakes are so high.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, there are a lot of things that individual senators, for example, would normally want to take a stand on and use that opportunity to get some attention to a specific issue that they care about. But the stakes are really high in this. And I don't think anybody wants to be that person who stood up and said, you know what, I'm going to not allow for this to be expedited. So my crystal ball says that they will move forward with it. There will be a lot of grumbling. It won't be pretty, but that's where I would put my money if I were a betting person.
I would agree with Jennifer. I mean, I think people can use this. They can have their speeches on their campaign ads, right, opposing the pieces that they disagree with, but at the end of the day, they don't want to be seen as responsible for defaulting on the debt.
Yeah, that would be the worst campaign ad, is that
Right.
you're the one that caused the country to default. Liz, another question for you. Given that we have these negotiated spending caps of flat for this year and 1% increase for next year, how are you expecting this to impact affordable housing programs funded by the government?
Yeah, it's a great question, and certainly something, again, that we're still digging through and going to be needing to keep an eye on, right, as the appropriations process kind of picks up again after this big pause for debt negotiations. But certainly anytime you have funding levels that are the same as the previous year, or slight increases that don't keep up with cost of living, or the inflation that we're currently facing, it's going to be problematic. And there are going to have to be some really difficult decisions that are made. It's kind of generally accepted around housing funding. So this is appropriated under the THUD appropriations subcommittee, that's Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development, that THUD appropriators don't want to take away support from people that already have it, right? So when you need to plus up programs in those areas, or you're facing some sort of funding challenges that don't give you the same amount of funding to work with, right? Like right now we're projecting for FY24 just to keep up with what they are providing currently. They would need somewhere in the range of $13 to $16 billion additionally. And so obviously if you're keeping it at the same level, you're not even going to be able to keep up with the same level of the same amount of spending that you're providing those current programs. So these are going to lead to some really tough decisions for appropriators. But all that said, just because you have across the board some one number for across the board, you don't know how that's going to play out, right? So in appropriations, we talk about two kind of jargony terms called 302A allocations and 302B allocations. And the 302A allocation is that top line, that one number that that appropriators get to all add up their bills to. And then 302B allocations is what each individual subcommittee gets. That's kind of their chunk of that top line number. So just because we have an idea of what the top number is, we don't know, what's going to go to HUD, what's going to go to, DOE, what's going to go to HHS. All of that still needs to be kind of negotiated. Mm-hmm. It's probably going to be negotiated differently in the House and the Senate. So that's another place to keep an eye on. So there's a lot of things that go into what is like the THUD appropriations number going to be. What are we going to see at USDA? We keep an eye there because there's housing services through the Rural Housing Service at USDA. What's Treasury going to get for the CDFI fund, right? There's a number of different places that we look. There are other things to consider too, right? We think earmarks could be kind of an easy target here. So you could get a lot of that funding kind of taken from the earmark bucket. And then maybe you don't have to look at quite such drastic cuts in appropriated programs. So kind of a lot to be seen, but certainly everyone's going to be kind of advocating for their piece. And so it's really, really critical right now for affordable housing and community development stakeholders and advocates to be, picking up the phone, calling their member of Congress and saying, this is where we really, we cannot afford cuts to these critical programs, and we really need to make sure that our FY24 appropriations process moves smoothly and provides, robust spending allocations for these programs.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really difficult. I mean, just diving in even a little bit more deeply, one of the things, I know we're going to be talking about the housing credit in a little bit, but the home program is such a critical program that's often used with the housing credit. And, when there's this kind of pressure on the THUD bill, and, as Liz was saying, even once we get that, 302B number, there's a number of other things that are in that bill, including all the transportation funds, but there's a lot of advocates on that side as well, and they have a lot of needs too. So there's going to be a lot of jostling as to what individual program allocation amounts are going to be. And, we know that, to fulfill existing vouchers and existing project-based contracts, especially in an era where the FHA receipts were lower than they have been in previous years, that's going to put pressure on other HUD programs. At the same time, we're seeing such huge increases in development costs, and the need for gap filler, soft resources is going to be really critical. So it's not going to be an easy couple of years.
Okay.
One last thing I would highlight too is that they have this 2-year deal, right, for the pretty level funding and then the 1% increase. And then they have this kind of like squishy deal for the next 4 years. That's not actually, they don't have numbers But it's just something to keep in mind that it's the two that are kind of set in stone for FY24 and 25, but then going out the next 4 years, you could kind of see the same sort of thing with the Budget Control Act, where you have different, you were coming back to caps year after year and having to kind of negotiate that spending again. So good times ahead.
And the little I know about Congress, they also have the supplemental that could be passed, and I haven't seen anywhere where supplementals have been kind of shot down in this debt negotiation, have they?
I haven't seen it specifically, but I think passing supplementals that are for anything short of major disasters or, defense related things, it's going to be really difficult.
Gotcha. We did get one question that's kind of pertains right to what you were saying, Liz. What is the current amount of earmarks?
Yeah. I'll look up that number and I'll put it in the chat when I get it.
Okay. Great, thank you. Yeah. Question for you, Jennifer. Uncommitted COVID funds are being recaptured as part of the negotiation. How does this impact the various emergency housing programs?
Yeah, so it's different depending on the program. So a number of the programs that were funded under the CARES Act back in 2020, right after the COVID, the pandemic really started, those have rescissions of unspent funds, but a number of the programs that have been very, very critical on the production side, like the Coronavirus State and Local Fiscal Recovery Fund, there is no clawback there, no rescission for those funds. So, for example, that was a very large pot of funds that went to states and local governments to do a number of things, but billions of dollars have been dedicated to affordable housing use. States, based off of NCSHA's surveys of state housing finance agencies, just at the state level, we're talking over $10 billion that would be going towards affordable housing from that particular pot of money. And that money will not be rescinded. So I think that's a really good thing. Similarly, emergency rental assistance that was funded under the ARPA, the Affordable American Rescue Plan Act in 2021, also would not be rescinded.
Great. We saw that the Inflation Reduction Act had some decreases. Liz, did the housing related funds survive?
Yeah, there's some good news there. All the climate programs and provisions that impact housing, we believe are safe. And the legislation doesn't include any changes to the IRA's climate and clean energy provisions. I think also important to note, the IRA doesn't focus explicitly on housing, but of course the legislative package includes a number of housing related provisions, and when taken together can help make homes and communities greener, affordable and resilient. So for example, we were working to make sure we were protecting EPA's greenhouse gas reduction fund, because we felt like that was a place that was a target at risk of the rescissions, but that is safe. The legislation would rescind $1.4 billion in funding provided for the IRS and the IRA, but the full amount of funds included in their FY23 spending plan for non-taxpayer services. This is about enforcement and modernization of the IRS. So when you read IRS stuff, we're hopeful that the energy tax credits there are also safe, but you'll see some of the the IRS language in there. But that could mean there's an impact from an implementation perspective, just because there's been a lot of cuts and now they have this big responsibility and will need the funding for operation purposes. But from a purely programmatic perspective, IRA funding that is applicable for affordable housing, we believe was protected in the package.
Thank you. I will get it out the dusty crystal balls again and talk about, you guys kind of hinted at this or around the appropriations top line number. Do you see that this deal is going to make the budget process harder, smoother, or about the same as expected?
Liz, do you want me to give a?
Yeah, sure. Why don't you, I'll I'm happy to go second.
Yeah, I think overall it's smoother. Again, not going to be pretty, but smoother. At least, having that top line funding number means that we have a place to start from. And while the top line numbers for each individual subcommittee might be different in the House and the Senate, just having the top line number overall be the same is going to make the process at least work a little bit more efficiently than it otherwise would without this. Honestly, I think that, if we did not have this going on, say we didn't even have the debt ceiling to deal with right now, I still think the appropriations process would have been so difficult, and it would have been very likely that we would have ended up with a year-long CR anyway, which essentially is the same total dollar amount is what we're going to be dealing with for 2024 because they're freezing it at 2023 levels. The difference here is that rather than freezing each individual program, there's going to be some movement within that across programs. So I think smoother overall, but it's going to, no one's going to be really happy with it.
Yeah, I mean, agreed. Unsurprisingly, I agree with Jennifer. You'll have 2 years of cap steel. There certainly was a scenario before that 99% piece that I talked about from Representative Massey, where you could see, if Republicans had gotten what they were asking for at FY22 numbers for appropriations, you could see Democrats kind of thinking the CR at FY23 is a win. So then that could have kind of wreaked some havoc on the appropriations process. But I think having that kind of fail-safe funding mechanism that happens automatically. So January 1st, if we don't have a deal in place, we're all going to be looking at 99% of current funding levels for CR. Hopefully that kind of helps move the process along. I think you take the threat of shutdown off the table. So it definitely makes for a smoother process. Wouldn't expect that means the process will be high functioning, right? Like we've kind of seen Congress time and time again prove that that this is never easy. It'll be interesting to see kind of when the appropriations process starts back up again, when we start to see numbers coming out of the Senate. We had started to see numbers coming out of the House, a little while ago, but then they pulled them from committee consideration, from full committee consideration, kind of waiting to see what happened here. So once this is all hopefully wrapped up, we'll kind of get back to it, but it'll be interesting to watch how that process moves. Yeah.
All right, just one more plug for the Q&A. If you have a question, please click on the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. And with that, we're going to pivot over to AHCIA, the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act. Jennifer, can you give us an update on the latest developments in Congress on the act?
Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this. So the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act was introduced just over 2 weeks ago. So it was May 11th. And boy, have we made a huge amount of progress in just a very, very short time. So we are already at an official count of 94 House members, including our leads, on the bill. That's huge. I mean, for legislation to have that much support across the board in the House in such a short amount of time is really telling. We also have a number of members who have signed on to co-sponsor and have not officially been added yet. So if you include those, our support is over 100 members of the House. On the Senate side, we've got 14 co-sponsors, including our leads already, and making gains over there as well. But what's most important about the support that we have is that it is split completely evenly in both chambers between Republicans and Democrats. And you just don't see this sort of thing happen very frequently. So of those 94 House members, we've got 47 Republicans, we've got 47 Democrats. Of the 14 senators, we've got 7 Democrats, we've got 7 Republicans. So it really shows that this is a place where, that bipartisanship is possible. and that bipartisanship happens in affordable housing. And that I think is just critical. We have especially strong support on the tax writing committees. We already have a third of the Senate Finance Committee and a full 70% of the House Ways and Means Committee already on board, and we're going to build on that. I also want to do just quickly a shout out to the leaders on the bill, because we've had some changes there. I think, many of the audience probably knows that this bill has long been championed by Senator Cantwell, and in the last Congress, Senator Young had been the lead Republican, and then we also had seconds. So a second Democrat and a second Republican. Senator Wyden, who's the chairman of the Finance Committee, has long been that second Democrat. But we had a change in the second Republican when Senator Portman from Ohio retired, and our new second Republican is Senator Blackburn from Tennessee. And if you know anything about Senator Blackburn, she is a very conservative member of Congress. So it really shows the breadth and the scope of the ideological spectrum that all supports this bill. And then on the House side, we actually have 6 leads this year. We had a lot of people who really wanted to be involved at that leadership level. So our new sponsor over there is Representative LaHood, who's a Republican from Illinois. And the other, he replaced Representative Walorski, who died last year tragically, and he had been a longtime co-sponsor before that. But the other 2 Republicans with him are Representative Wenstrup from Ohio and Representative Tenney from New York. And then on the Democratic side, we've got Representative Del Bene, who's been with us for a while, and Representative Beyer from Virginia, and then Representative Panetta from California. So a great group of leads. We're doing really well. And I'm excited to keep building on that.
Excellent. And what are the major provisions in the AHCIA this year?
So the bill is pretty similar to what it was last year, but some of the, just to for everybody's ability to remember where we are, what it would do is a few different things. So there's a lot of provisions, but the big ones, the ones that are actually going to produce additional housing. One is over on the 9% side of the credit. This would restore the 12.5% cap increase that we had from 2018 to 2021. So we put that back in and then build on top of that essentially a 50% increase. It would be phased in over 2 years with the inflation adjustment built into that as well. So that would do so much to increase our 9% credit resources and allow us to build more. On the 4% side, it would reduce the bond financing threshold, which we all call the 50% test, down to 25. I'm looking forward to calling it the 25% test instead. And that would be, I mean, really, that is the biggest production lever that we could do in order to just increase your bricks and sticks housing and do what we need to do for production and preservation. So those are the 2 ones that I think most people are most familiar with. But we also have a number of basis boost proposals for extremely low income households, for rural areas, for Native American areas, a state determined basis boost for bond finance deals mirroring what we already have over on the 9% side of the program. And then just a host of other provisions that are really more programmatic in nature, probably don't cost money, just changes that streamline the program, things that would really make it work better, easier to administer, align the program with some of the other housing programs that it's often used with, codifying certain protections for veterans, implementing pieces of the Violence Against Women Act, which has long covered the housing credit program, but there have been some questions about how that actually works with Section 42. So all of these things are included in this very comprehensive bill that has the support of the entire affordable housing community.
And one more question, how might the bill advance in Congress this year?
So obviously, we are going to be looking for whatever vehicles we could possibly get onto. We really want to be best positioned to move on anything that's going to move. So I guess just stepping back for a moment, though, in practice, tax bills like this that are standalone bills, they don't pass on their own. Rather, they're going to pass or at least provisions of them will pass in some sort of larger package that we usually call a vehicle. But again, that's DC jargon. For example, some of the things that have come out of this bill in the past are the 12.5% increase and the average income test provision. Those are things that we got in 2018, and those actually passed on the 2018 Consolidated Appropriations Act. We also got the 4% minimum rate, which was from this bill originally, and that was passed in a year-end package with appropriations and COVID relief money and a whole bunch of other things at the end of 2020. And so that is typically how things go with moving these things. But what's important is that you always have to be ready. And that means looking for every opportunity, having your support lined up, keeping this top of mind and a big priority for members of Congress. Some of the potential vehicles that are out there, we certainly think, there might be a tax title in bills like the Farm Bill. There might be a tax title in the Federal Aviation Administration reauthorization bill, and those are must-pass legislation. But I think really when it comes down to it, our best shot is going to be an end of the year bill. That's where tax provisions have often moved, is in that end of year bill. We'll see what happens with appropriations. That's often a really important vehicle for tax provisions. But regardless, I think that, the chance of getting all of AHCIA done in one full swoop is pretty low. But we're going to be working on getting pieces of it where they fit in best. Certainly those production provisions are a top priority, I think, for NCSHA, for enterprise, and for a lot of our colleagues that work in other affordable housing groups, because we know how dire the situation is out there with lack of affordable housing. So that's how I see it moving forward. I would just encourage everybody who's here to be doing your work now and, really trying to get members to co-sponsor these bills. I know that's top of mind for us.
You've already touched on this a little bit, Jennifer, but quite a question to both of you. Given the impacts of these funding caps that are coming, how does that impact AHCIA? So
I think that it really only makes it more important that we get this done. I look at things like the basis boost provisions that are in there that would allow additional equity to go into individual developments. If we have less home money next year, or, for example, we already saw the state-by-state numbers for the Housing Trust Fund, which had gone significantly down because Fannie and Freddie's new business had gone down. It makes those kinds of basis boosts really more important than ever before for getting deals to pencil, because you just aren't going to have as robust soft resources to tap into. I think whether it impacts the bill itself as far as moving forward, a lot of that's going to depend on the appropriations process, because I do think that that's such an important vehicle that we're going to be hoping to be able to advance this through.
I would just add, right, anything that moves is going to have to be bipartisan, clearly, right? So when you started this Congress looking at the divided, the Republican House and the Democratic Senate, you knew that there were only going to be a couple of things that were going to end up coming out of this Congress, right? Must pass legislation and things that have strong bipartisan support. And this is such a clear example of a program that has broad bipartisan support across the aisle. So I'm very hopeful, right, that there is an opportunity. We came really close in the last Congress to getting part of some pieces of AHCIA moved. So, if you end up with a CR, that makes life more challenging. But if there is an appropriations process, this is, I'll be a glass half full kind of panelist right now and just say this is one of the big things that I feel like Congress can kind of come together on and try and move at the end of the year.
One of the things that I think is really in our favor is the support that we have on the tax writing committees. At least I've been doing this stuff for a while now, and I have never seen a situation where the chair and ranking member in both chambers, in the tax writing committees in both chambers, was as supportive of the housing credit as we have right now. And I think that helps us greatly. On the Senate side, we've got Senator Wyden, who's one of our lead co-sponsors. We have, Senator Crapo as the ranking member there, who is, has been a supporter of the housing credit program, said a lot of very positive things about the program during a recent hearing in the Senate Finance Committee. And then over on the House side, we've got Representative Smith as chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. He was a co-sponsor of this bill in the last Congress, has been extremely supportive of the program itself, really understands the needs for this, and is, sees this as a mechanism to help working households. And that's really important to him. And then you've got, Representative Neal as the ranking member over there, and he has always been a huge supporter of the housing credit. So that in and of itself puts us in a really good position. Obviously nothing is a given, but you could not ask for better support in those really key positions.
One last question on HCIA for me is, what can our stakeholders and the folks listening in on the webinar do to advocate for it?
So I'm glad that you asked that. It sets us up because NCSHA and Enterprise together co-chair the Action campaign. And I would say first and foremost, if anybody is listening and that you are not a member of Action already, please go to rentalhousingaction.org and sign up, because it is free to join. And basically what you're signing up to do is say, yes, I support this legislation. We have, monthly calls where we go through, where things are with the bill, updates, lots of opportunities to get involved. We have tons of really great materials that you can use, state fact sheets, district fact sheets. Every single district across the country has an Action fact sheet that shows what kind of impact the housing credit has had in that member of Congress's district, and what the needs are in that member of Congress's state and district. So those sorts of things are really important to the advocacy work that we hope you'll be doing. And we want to be able to make this as easy as possible for you to do it. So please go ahead and sign up there. I would say, one of the things you can do is check out whether or not your member is already a co-sponsor. We have a co-sponsorship list that's done state by state to make it easier. It's easier than going on to congress.gov and finding the information. And I would also say, talk to local government officials, get them involved in this push, have them talk to members of Congress. And then lastly, if you are an affordable housing provider, please invite your members of Congress to, go to a property tour, meet the residents, go to a ribbon cutting, go to a groundbreaking, because that's what we hear from members of Congress all the time, that is what made them see this program and realize, oh, this housing fits in really, really well with the community. And, oh, this housing is helping people in my district. And, being able to get that information is probably the most powerful thing that you can do to advocate for the program and for the legislation.
Mm-hmm. Great. We've had two questions, one kind of circling back around, Liz, on the earmarks question.
Yeah, so thanks for giving me a minute to kind of refresh my memory. So we've had earmarks around for just very short while now, but for FY23 we're at 8.7 billion. The largest chunk of the subcommittee that had that number was the TED committee. So if you're looking at a place to kind of make some changes for THUD, that is an opportunity to save some money, so you don't have to take it from other places.
Okay. And then we got a second question. Will there be different impact towards new development versus rehabilitation?
So I assume that means, as far as the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act goes. So there's nothing in that bill that says, states need to spend X% of their money on, rehab versus new construction. That would still be left up to the states. But, and obviously to the developers who are putting in projects to the states and making those proposals. But what it does do is provide more resources so that we can do more of both, which is really important. And then over on the preservation side, it tries to break down some of the barriers that we face on preservation. So, for example, it would clarify that relocation costs, if you have to move a household out of their unit in order to do rehab on the property, that those could be capitalized as part of basis. It would allow, if you're doing a rehab of, say it's an old HUD deal, and you've got some tenants who are over income in that development, it would grandfather those tenants in so that you're not forced as a developer to either, create an incentive for the tenant to leave or not get credits on the basis associated with that tenant's unit. So in those ways, it is certainly helpful on the rehab side of the spectrum, but it doesn't necessarily mean that a state's going to make a decision to move money, set it aside for rehab versus new construction. It's very much still keeping with the overall emphasis of the program, which is one of state discretion to set their priorities, and a program that really works for a lot of different situations based off of unique needs.
Thank you. Once again, if there's any other questions, please go ahead and click on the Q&A button. In the meantime, we have a kind of a general question back to you both. What does the world look like if the process takes too long to get us close or to a deal by Monday, or an approved signed bill? So we've breached the debt ceiling and it's still going through Congress.
I can kind of kick us off maybe by just saying, I think in that scenario that I mentioned where it takes a day or two, it looks a lot different than actually like having no deal, no end in sight, right? As I mentioned, right, the date has changed a little bit. It was June 1st, now it's June 5th. We're kind of teetering right on the brink there. There was some conversation among members of Congress at the end of last week to say, do we really need to adhere to June 5th? Can we kind of see how markets react and kind of go from there, which feels a little like not the best choice that people could make, but I don't think that a day or two would cause kind of the drastic, fiscal meltdown that we are concerned about seeing in the long run. Then, if you look further out, we don't really know because we've never defaulted on our debt before, but kind of all accounts are that it would be really disastrous. We'll also mention it's not the same thing as a shutdown. I've gotten that question pretty frequently. So a government shutdown is when annual funding expires and they don't have any other plan to continue that funding. So every year it's the end of September when the fiscal year ends, and if there's no continuing resolution that says we'll continue to fund the government for this set period of time at this level, or there's no FY24 appropriations bills in place, then you could have that government shutdown like we saw a couple of years ago, where there's just no funding in place and only essential workers continue in the government. So that's not what would happen if we default on our debt. Theoretically, people could continue, working in the government and continue trying to answer this question for people. But frankly, I think the result would be much more drastic and terrible for the global economy than just, a 30-day government shutdown would be.
Yeah, I think, it's really scary to think about what would happen if this goes beyond a couple days, even if eventually they were able to meet, get a deal, and it's a week later or something like that. In the meantime, our our bond rating would be downgraded, I would imagine. If we look at the amount of money that we're paying towards interest on the debt now, think about how that would impact our ability to borrow in the future if something like this were to actually move forward. I think, the markets generally have been kind of saying, well, this has never happened before, and therefore it probably won't happen now. We do not want them to think this is the possibility, not only for happening this one time, but once it happens once, that this could happen in the future.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree from a financial perspective. Like this morning when it was, the markets opened and they knew that there was a deal, the treasuries went down 16 basis points. So that's a good thing, right? Is that people saw this as really coming together. If I think there would probably be something built in, to your point, Jennifer, that in the interest rate going forward, regardless if it's 2 days or 2 weeks, there will be something that's going to increase. So that's just the way it is. I remember reading about sometime in the 70s, there was a blip and we had the debt ceiling breached. And that did raise interest rates, and they say that raise has continued because there's built-in risk on that. And so I think if even if it goes to Tuesday or Wednesday, we will have a little built-in risk in the rates going forward. Now, what happens if the Rules Committee votes not to go through? Let's take this in two pieces. What happens if there are 7 votes against it and 6 votes for it? Let's do that one first.
For the Rules Committee?
Yeah. Besides that, the market is going to tank tomorrow.
You gotta come up with a deal that can get to the House floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happens if there are 3 Republicans who do not vote for it, and 1 or 2 Democrats or all the Democrats vote for it?
If all the Democrats support it, it would pass if you only have 3 Republicans opposing.
Mhm.
So you need a total of, you need those 7 votes.
Mhm.
I would assume Representative Massey would be getting a lot of telephone calls.
Yeah.
And we don't know what this would all mean for the speakership and, leadership generally in the House.
Yeah, because I assume that if Republicans needed Democrats to pass in the committee, I mean, it's become clear that the Republicans will need Democrats to pass on the House floor.
Mhm.
But if it's in the committee, then I believe that part of the deal, as you were talking about earlier, Liz, on the 15 votes, was that the Republicans would only pass, and that's always kind of been the Hassert rule, right? That they would only use the party in power to have something go forward, the majority of the party in power. So in that case, he would be at risk, and that could jeopardize other things going forward, including the budget, even if we have a top line number.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, that's a very good point, right? When we saw McCarthy come out of that vote as speaker, the 15th vote as speaker, his power certainly was in question, right? Is he going to actually be able to corral a Republican caucus that is going to be able to do anything if they're so divided that it takes 15 votes to elect leadership, right? And I think he's surprised a lot of people since then in how, frankly, how well he's done at kind of getting everyone on the same page and being able to pass legislation through the House. And so this would certainly be a big step back, and it would be interesting to see, part of the deal is that one person can call for a removal of the speaker. And so I think that would be very much in question if he wasn't able to get this through the Rules Committee. So I really do believe we're going to find that Massey voted yes, and this is all kind of theorizing, but it definitely would make life much more interesting for the next couple of days.
I think one thing we can all agree on is that the Speaker of the House might just be the most difficult job to have in Washington. I mean, honestly, it is hard to hold together, such a disparate group of people, and especially when you only have 4 votes to spare on the floor, that's a hard job.
Yeah, yeah. It's a very difficult job. And yeah, I mean, but we have to talk about these things because it makes kind of more interesting TV, Liz. And so that's what it is. Right. So
Never a dull moment on the
no,
Hill.
definitely not. So we did get a question that may be more treasure or more capital markets than policy. They're expecting, will there be a flood of treasury bonds issued as soon as the ceiling's raised, which would increase treasuries? Have you guys heard anything where, I know with all these extraordinary measures being used, mostly around, you know, things like the retirement fund for federal employees and other things similar to that, would it be a big boost or big debt issuance? Do you guys know around that, just to get everything back to zero?
I honestly am not sure how to answer that question. It is, you know, I'm a policy gal and not a bond market gal.
Fair
Yeah,
enough. Yeah.
But yeah.
But yeah, I would imagine if in fact they do have to issue that much just to catch up, or would they do it more gradually over time? But if they did it all at once, that it would increase the rates on that. All right, it's about 4:22. I haven't heard anything from the Rules Committee yet. Are there any last questions? And having not really seen anything, any last comments from our esteemed panelists?
Just encouraging everybody to go out and do your advocacy work. I know that many of you who are watching this have day jobs, and this is not your day job like it is mine, but you know, we cannot, you know, do what we need to do unless members of Congress are hearing from folks who are, you know, back home in their districts and in their states. And you know, this is such an important time to be building affordable housing. We just, you know, we've had a supply problem for a long time, but it's been made worse. And, you know, we're seeing the impact of that with high rents, rents going up higher than they have in, you know, recent years. The affordability issues are extreme. So we really need more supply.
Yeah, we just echo, you know, thank you all for your interest and for joining us today. And, you know, national or DC based, you know, lobbyists and government relations people like us can be on the Hill all day long, and it still isn't as impactful as hearing from a constituent right back home in their state or district. So pick up the phone, call your member of Congress, and encourage them to support these important pieces of legislation like AHCIA.
And use the materials that are provided by the Action Campaign, because, you know, they're packaged really, really nicely. We've got, you know, 1-page summaries and detailed summaries and, you know, everything that you would need to make it easier for a staff person on the Hill to go to their boss with the information that they need to get that boss to agree to co-sponsor.
Oh, great. Jennifer Schwartz of NCSHA, Liz Osborn of Enterprise Community Partners. Thank you both for joining us and taking the time. And thank you all for joining the webinar. And as I mentioned, there will be a link for the recording sent out afterwards. I hope everybody has a great rest of your afternoon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.